See, make sure volume is up. Andre's back. Praise Jesus. Nah, okay. So today I had a vision, right? And it brought me back to my childhood. And today in Common Sense Church, or Common Sense Theater, or Common Sense Volume 2, Common Sense Sermons, we're going to talk about two models, right? Both deal with statistics, but both deals with a form of logic. And both is going to be framed into what I want to really speak about, right? So, last week we did, the greater fool theory, right? There's always going to be a greater fool. There's always going to be a newer fool in economics, basically saying I can sell you an old product to a new person for a higher price than I could sell it to the same person that saw it before. And there's always going to be a newer person, a newer fool to buy the same thing. And then we tied that into these people who, once one hustle gets stopped, they create another hustle because they know it's going to be new people to follow that hustle. Greater fool theory, right? Today, we're going to talk about two things that hit me directly, right? One is the gambler's fallacy, and two is the law of averages. Both are different, but both can work together in a form or a way. But both seems to create an illusion because the human mind works in patterns, right? And we seem to use these patterns to create beliefs, right? And then these beliefs comes from certain people. And then those people are kind of like exalted into this thing called prophets or psychics. And I'm not saying telepathy does not exist in some shape or form or some type of like higher knowing. But the problem is the effectiveness of therefore. What am I talking about? So we're going to start with the gambler's fallacy. I used to love potato chips. Now I eat something called oyster crackers, right? Less calories, very little salt, light on the body. Let's say this bag has 20 pieces, right? Let's say 20, right? Let's say this bag has 20 also. The gambler's fallacy, since you see the first two with 20 and say, wow, would the third one have 20? But each bag is its own individual case, which causes the gambler fallacy. Same thing with flipping a coin. If it's two sides to a coin and I flip it once and it's heads and I flip it again and it's heads and I flip it again and it's heads, the fourth time I flip it does not automatically mean it's going to be heads because each flip has its own individual case because each coin has two individual sides. The gambler's fallacy. Walk with me. Now we have the law of averages. If you do something enough, you're going to create a ratio, or you're going to create something that you can actually divide your wins to your losses, your success rates to your failures, i.e. batting average, right? If you get up to the plate 10 times or 9 times and you hit the ball 3 times safely, that's 33. You're batting 333, right? You're batting 300, but it's 333 to be exactly. Law of averages. Why do I say this? As the few of you know who rock with me, know I used to be a believer, right? I was Bible toting, scripture quoting, washed in the blood of the Lamb, all of that stuff, right? And that's fine. Everybody has progression. Everyone has their story. But I saw something today and it made me really think. And it brought me back to last week with the gamblers. It brought me back to the greater fool theory. there's a guy who's big on Facebook, who's big on YouTube, and I ain't got no problem with him. I think he's kind of like silly. His name is Larry Reed, and he has something called Larry Reed Live. And he made a post today, and he said, the prophet is coming back. Now, anyone who knows Larry Reed, he calls himself a prophet. And he said he studied under this prophet who is definitely like skeptical, named E. Bishop Bernard Jordan. So it made me think of the gambler's fallacy and the law of averages. So let's say E. Bishop Bernard Jordan and his congregation, right? And he does his prophecies. Let's say 4 people out of 200, right? He's actually correct. He just says, "Oh, you're gonna have a baby," and she has a baby. Or he predicts someone is going to win the lottery, and they win the lottery. Okay, cool. Here's the problem. If you have the power to predict or prophesy what is going to happen in a person's life, why do I have to go on Patreon to hear it? Here's the problem with that. When I was a kid, this is all going to play into it. When I was a child, I was 16 years old, and I tagged my cousin in this because if he has any type of memory, my cousin Jonathan, he knows that I'm not lying. And if he remembers, he remembers. If he don't, I'm not lying. So when I was a kid, I am the same way I am now. As a child, right? I was very shy, very demure, right? Very not into myself on some arrogant stuff, but into myself is like into my thoughts, just kind of a loner to an extent. I was 16 years old, and the church I used to go to had a prophet that used to come and visit the church. And I'll never forget it. My man who I grew up with in that church, Silas, was sitting to the left of me. Jonathan was sitting to the right of me. The whole time during that service, and we were sitting in the second row, dead smack in the middle to the left side of the church. The whole time that day, Silas and Jonathan were cracking jokes in between. Now, like they were like this, so both of their heads is like this. I'm sitting back like that. Something happened that day. It was the first day I questioned this whole dynamic of the God concept and all this, right? Prophet, I'm not even going to say his name, but the prophet called me up. And now, mind you, I hate attention. Like, I don't like to be the center of attention. I'm very and one is because when you grow up and you're the outcast, right? Because I'm literally the outcast, the fat nerd. Very few people acknowledge me in the church, which is fine. I don't care. Very few people even spoke to me. And when they did, it was condescending. Like, Andre, you so, yeah, whatever. The prophet called me up. You know what the prophet did in front of the whole congregation? Prophet said, "God told me something about you, boy. You're trying to fit in. You're not being yourself. You should have seen my face." I was like, what? And I'm just looking around, and I'll never forget, pan to my right, my cousin J.E., who plays the organ still to this day at that church, was like smiling at me. And I'm like, Jay, don't even talk. Like, why is he smiling at me? But he said, "You trying to fit in. God said, be yourself." And I'm saying, and I'm sitting there looking at him and one thing I can tell you the truth about me, even though I'm not violent as far as like, I'm not a woman beater or none of that, but I have rage in me because as a Capricorn, I keep a lot of stuff in me, right? I don't really bother people, right? And I don't really lash out. So I have a little rage in me, which I take out in the gym or designing or just doing something creative. I'll never forget that day, right? And I was saying to myself, I went back to my chair after he done called me out and said, God said, you got to think for yourself and be yourself and blah, 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 and you gotta stop fitting in. I see you, you're trying to fit in. You're trying to fit in, boy. I said, someone is lying. I said, because, and Jonathan knows I got love for him. Like, Jonathan knows I'm not going in on him. But my cousin who moved to New Jersey from Arkansas was the one who had to fit in initially because no one knew Jonathan. I was already 11. Now, mind you, I was 16 then, but I was already 11. So Jonathan had to go through the process of fitting in, right? Who was he talking to? Was he talking to me, or was God? Or, sorry about that. We back. So like I said, someone is lying. Who was he talking to? Was God Wi-Fi messed up? Was his channels messed up talking to the prophet? Or did he just single me out because he saw 3 teenagers laughing in the second row and I wasn't even doing anything? I swear to you, like, on my dad, I was not doing anything. So this is what happened. Walk with me, y'all. It's a story, but walk with me. I never told no one this. Almost a perfect year later, the same prophet is now doing a youth, I don't want to say retreat because it was in a day, but they called it retreat. And one thing Capricorns are, which is a good thing in some cases and a bad thing in other cases, we're vengeful. The little fat Andre, well, I wasn't little at that time. I walked up to him and I had already stopped kind of like going to church because I was lucky enough to get into the fashion. I was like 17, already in the fashion industry deep. But I said to him, he was sitting there, mind his business. He finished doing his little speak and they took a little break for their workshop. And I said, let me ask you a question, prophet. He said, yeah, go ahead. I said, a year ago, you called me out for not being myself. And I was always myself. And I said, you also called me out for being a pretender and trying to fit in. I said, I couldn't fit in. I was fat. I was the nerd. I couldn't get a girl to kiss me, let alone piss on me. I couldn't get my own flesh and blood to acknowledge me. Who was you talking to? And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, son, I don't even know who I'll be talking to. I said, what? He said, it just comes over me. So I said, okay, you're the prophet of God. You called me out in front of hordes of people. And I'll never forget it. My cousin went to my mom the very next day of the revival when he called me out and said, oh, he said he's going to do great things and he's going to... I was so embarrassed because I know my mom. She's an extreme person. The point I'm trying to make is that was the first day I questioned this whole thing, right? Because when he told me, I didn't know who I was talking to. So I said, then why did he call me up? But he said 2 things that will always stick with me. He said, but the fact that you came to me makes me kind of like respect you as a person. He said, because no one has ever questioned me as a prophet. This is what he said. I tell you no lie. He said, and you're going to be the person. Now, I'm not taking this. This goes into the law of averages. He said, and you're going to be the person that's going to provoke people to think. On my dad, he said that. Now, as I'm old now, I could tell you that he said the latter because I actually spoke to him and I challenged him, which is a form of what? Thought provocateur, right? You're basically provoking thought by challenging the norm. Why are you saying all this? Let's get to the nitty gritty. When you're dealing with the gambler's fallacy, every separate case is its own separate case. When you're dealing with the law of averages, if a person does something enough, it will have its success rate and its failures. What do you mean, Andre? Well, if you know how to play basketball or not, and you shoot at a hoop 10 times, you might make one. Does that make you a good shooter? Or if you shoot at it and make 5, does that make you a great shooter? Or you just had more options, you had more success rate. It's the same thing with these so-called prophets. Understand this, y'all. I know y'all not gonna want to hear this, because another thing, I'm gonna say this. I wasn't gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it. It's like Andre is very, and I'm not referring to myself in third person, but I want the person who's looking. I'm very, 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 very calculated, right? Everything. So, for example, we seen homeboy Derek Jackson, right? He does his little BS, right? I created so many memes, right? I did that on purpose. Why did I do that? Because before that, I seen a lot of people on my page and timeline. Oh, I'm about business and I'm a this, that, and the third, and that, blah, blah, right? And I got my life. I ain't doing that stuff, right? I deliberately posted 5 memes about homeboy. Break. I posted how black families are 50% of the homeless population. Break. 5 more memes about homeboy. How many people you think liked the article about black people being 50% of the homeless population? And how many people you think liked the actual tomfoolery? But these are the same people that'll tell you they're about their business and I'm a... All right, back to the subject. So let's look at E. Bishop Bernard Jordan. I have a problem with something about these prophets. If you love your people, or if you love your God, or if you just love humanity, if these things come to you, right, and it can help someone, prevent them from like going into like massive failure of life, do you have to charge them? Why, Andre, do you ask that question? Why I ask that question? Simple. Because this man is now predicting stocks via Patreon. Here's the thing. The stock market during the lockdown and slightly after, even now, we're going at such of a peak, right? Because the Fed pumped money into the system. That's simple talk, right? A monkey, if you gave him $200, could pick stock. Now, a person who's new to it be like, oh, E. Bishop Bernard went on Larry Reed Live and picked the stock. Lord Jesus. What are we? Make it make sense. Because then you would have to say to yourself, why can't he always pick the proper stock? And if he can always pick the proper stock, why don't he do that, make himself rich to make you rich? Does that make sense? Maybe it don't. Here's another issue. Why do I have to go on Patreon? So I have to subscribe to a man's Patreon channel for him to bring on his master teacher, master prophet, so him could give me predictions on the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ. Does that make sense? Or is it simply an individual case of somebody being right once and doing it enough to be right more than once? It doesn't make him a prophet. And why does it have to turn a P-R-O-F-I-T prophet? My gripe with that is this. I have a friend on Facebook named Lillian. The other day, she called me, she texted me, and she said, Andre, I want to take my stimulus money because if I don't, I know it's going to be consumed. I'm ready to learn how to invest. I said, okay. When you have time. I'm free 2 o'clock the next day. 2 o'clock, she hit me, and I taught her simple long-term investing. And she said, thank you. And you know what I said? don't you ever thank me for doing what I'm supposed to do for another human being. What would I look like to charge her the same money it would take her to initially invest? It doesn't make sense. So I love you as a sister or brother or cousin or what. We in this community, but I got to charge you to teach you basic knowledge. That's where the fallacy is at. A prophet who is telling you stocks himself should be like filthy in stocks to the point where he can't charge you for information on stocks. I know I'm a moron. I swear to you, I know I'm a moron. But does that make sense? And do he really love his God? And do he really love you? One of my favorite, because I look at religion, especially as I'm older, it's just as cultural edicts for each region of the world that it came from. So one of my favorite things out of the Quran or Muslims say to each other is, I do for my brother as I do for myself. I think that's one of the most powerful things, right? Or in certain Semitic communities, they say, I'll spend 5 shekels with my brother before I spend a shekel with another. That's beautiful. That's like poetic, right? The point I'm trying to make, how can someone be a prophet and can predict economic surplus and charge you when that person should be in economic surplus? If I'm in economic surplus and I charge you for a prophecy, that means I'm trying to do what? Turn a profit, a profit. Does that make sense? I know I'm a moron. But this is the problem and the fallacy with this. If I'm a prophet, quotes, and if Vanessa or I see Callie or whoever's still watching, and they came up to me one day and said, if let's just say Callie has his fiance, right? And he says, outside of church, if he comes to me every time he says, I want to really have a baby. I want to have a baby, Andre. And what if I get up in church 2 months later? Callie, God said you're going to have a baby. The viewership in the congregation is like, oh, Prophet Andre says he's going to have a baby. They don't even know that Callie regurgitated to me over and over and over again that he wanted to have a baby. And guess what happens if he's keep trying to have a baby with his woman? She's probably going to get pregnant. Does that make me a prophet? Does that make me a prophet? Or does that kind of like give you the theater of the mind, right? See, I'm a moron. I don't pretend to be all these things, right? I troll for a reason. But the thing I want y'all to like absorb, I'm not telling you to believe in your deity. I don't care what. Andre's in a new space. Trust me. Listen, all I'm waiting for is them to open up that international travel so I can get the heck out of here, be somewhere in Stockholm or Amsterdam, butt naked eating grapes, and I don't eat grapes. The point I'm making is, when do we start using logic? There are reasons why there are these models that people follow, and you the one that fall victim to it, because it replicates itself. The law of averages. What is the difference between, what was that lady name? The one with the fake Jamaican accent in your prophet, E. Bishop Bernard Jordan. And I'm just naming him because that's the one. That reminds me. Me and him had a little spat. They erased my comment because it made sense. I want to show y'all something. I really want y'all to walk with me real quick. So, y'all know me. I deal in like logic and science, right? So, a year ago, yeah, Cleo, exactly. Mrs. Cleo. A year ago, Bishop Bernard Jordan was on Larry Reed Live. He says something to me that the old Andre, well, the new Andre now, yeah, I let it. But last year, I was like, what is he talking about? The man, so Larry Reed said, oh, Bernard, please tell him about what you saw. And this man, I know y'all, listen, this man said, well, God said, the locust in Egypt is the sign that COVID is a plague on the world. What? You know, there's something called an almanac. It is something that scientists use, and it's a thing called meteorology, right? That you watch the weather. Now here, let's say he was right, hypothetically. But let's say what science shows. Experts say the upsurge is likely to be tied to extreme weather events, according to Cressman. Powerful cyclones in 2008 dumped loads of water in Amman, Yemen, in the Horn of Africa. Well, where's the Horn of Africa? Egypt. Where also the Horn of Africa? Ethiopia, Eritrea. Locust is just a weather system that produced these bugs because of the water. And the water makes them swarm because why? They mate. Is that a plague or is that just science? That's like me saying, listen, y'all, the sun gonna come out tomorrow morning, 6:15. You're bullshitting. Does that make me a prophet? I had a woman at work say to me, and I literally fell on the ground, dirtied my shirt laughing. She says, Andre, do you believe preachers are clairvoyant? I said, absolutely not. And she said to me, I seen a preacher predict a woman was going to get pregnant and predict the baby's name. And you know what I said to her? I said, you don't think the woman believed in this preacher enough that when he told her the baby's name, when she actually got pregnant, she decided to name it that? Or do you think the preacher actually picked out the baby's name? What are we talking about? Then she said to me, Andre, do you believe that I seen him pray over people and heal them? I said, Cindy, I'm an idiot. If you saw your pastor pray over someone and heal them, then why isn't he at the ICU praying over everyone with COVID? And she just looked at me. You know why? Because logic and fantastical do not share the same space. And it's the same thing. See, by me understanding these characters, because that's what they are, right? They become caricatures, right? You understand what undergirds that. And what undergirds that is that you don't want to live in logic. Someone said to me one day, Andre, why do you always talk reality and logic? I said, because if you live in reality, as soon as your reality change, you will adapt to the reality that has changed. I.e., Andre loves to work out. Why? Because it allows me to release frustrations, right? I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't hit on my women unless I'm broke. No, I'm just playing. I don't drink. I don't smoke. And I like to have a sound mind, right? I like to have a sound mind. So when I'm in the gym, anyone who knows me, I'm in the gym, like I have my music on, but I also be like thinking of designs and I came up with God is good and money is better in the gym. I came up with grind hard to find God. I came up with the rich shall inherit the earth. All of that, like Passport Global, I came up in the gym. Point I'm making is, if Andre stops working out and I look in the mirror and I see a gut, reality tells me, Andre, you've gained some weight. I have to do something about that gut. Fantasy, like, I'm all right. No, I'm not. Nothing wrong with having a gut if you have a gut. The point I'm trying to make is, when do we use logic? This is why I'm calling this the common sense sermons. When do we use logic? I get it. Listen, y'all. One thing about Andre, he tells on himself, and I'm speaking in third person to give you emphasis that I'm telling on myself. One thing about me, right? I believed so much in that doctrine, I wouldn't even curse. You know how much of an idiot I feel like? Now, mind you, you don't have to use expletives and profanity, right? Even though words are just words, but you don't have to use it if you do not wish to use it, right? But do you understand the mental strain as a teenager, always having, because this was before my vocabulary was expansive, right? So you know the strain it feels to like pick out every word just because you don't want to disappoint the man up there? Do you know how hard it is? Because in the Bible, you lust, right? Everything is like a form of lust. So if you're on a date with a woman says, Andre, I don't care what I'm wearing, no vagina. And you say, okay. But she's wearing something so revealing that your elevator rides to the top floor. That's called lust. Or in science terms, it's called, I saw something that I was attracted to. The blood went down there. Beep. I didn't rape her. I didn't touch her. But it's called lust. Do you know how hard it is? Especially like when your hormones are raging, not to kind of like see something and be like, ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. Does that make sense? All of that ties into the veil that is pulled over your eyes to think that somebody is actually predicting stocks or predicting your surplus or predicting your success. Listen, in stocks is literally a gamble, law of averages, and it is technical analysis, it's functional analysis. What is the function of this company and what is their data? I.e., AMC movie theaters was a pump and dump, pump and dump, pump and dump, right? But guess what happened? They got rid of a lot of their debt during being closed. So there's a good chance when they reopen fully that they might blow up if people get into the realm of going outside again and saying, I want to see a movie instead of staying home. Technical analysis, functional analysis. I'm not a prophet to predict that. So believe in what you want. Trust me, I don't care. The point I'm making is, why don't we have any prophets that's going to come up to you and just give it to you for free? If they have all this information, I have yet, Bishop Bernard Jordan included, even the one that called me out as a little kid, I have yet to see a prophet prophesy black people out of financial bondage. Voila, magic, as we say in Atlanta. When you understand that 50% of the homeless population are black families, where are you, Bishop Bernard Jordan? Where are you, Larry Reed? Y'all prophets. When you understand black men make up about 2% Los Angeles County population. That's what we talking about. North Hollywood, West Hollywood. We're talking about Cerritos, Long Beach, Santa Monica, Rosemead, and it goes on and on and on. Burbank, right? 2% of LA population is black men. 80% of LA Skid Row is black men. Where are the prophets to prophesy them out of homelessness? I know it doesn't make sense because I'm saying it. This man is literally on Patreon telling you, I'm hearing this thing that's coming to me, and I just want to tell you. Tell me what? And for how much? Anyone under the sound of my voice who has a relationship with me knows I do not charge for any type of financial. Why? Because I've been lucky, right? Anyone who's close to me, I tell them, when you understand what the crack era did to black families, I was so lucky to have a mom and dad that worked, that wasn't on crack. I had to come, all I had to do was come home, be fat, watch Saved by the Bell, do homework, go to sleep. I had friends in school who I remember mom used to just walk into our class, sprung out on crack. As an adult, you'd be like, yo, I remember that. As a kid, you think it's funny because you don't know what's going on. You don't know the perpetuated trauma, right, that happens from that. This is why I keep a very even keel, right? This is why I'm very respectful and modest. Now I'm a Capricorn, so my gift is my curse. I love fly stuff. I live in the physical world, so I love fly stuff. Love it. I ain't gonna lie to you. But I'm not gonna rob your purse, and I'm not gonna drug you or swindle you to get your money. I don't need to do that. The point I'm making is, where are these profits to get us out of our situation? They can sell you a book. I want y'all to think about this. And I'm gonna close on this. We're gonna have a collection. E. Bishop Bernard Jordan, televangelist / prophecy show, aired on BET after BET Uncut. Now, I'm an idiot. So let's just say his God is authentic. I'm sure God is saying, well, they just watched an hour worth of booty shaking, tip drilling videos. They need a prophecy. And not only do they need a prophecy for about $5.99 a minute of you constantly pressing 1 to finally get to the prophecy of him telling you that God probably loves you. That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Well, that has been the common sense sermon for the night. And if I'm wrong, show me a prophet that don't work without a prophet. And then, if I'm right, then you kind of got to side with me on the other stuff I say about finances over fantasy. You kind of got to do it, because that means these prophets aren't working for free. And they have the ability to bring you money and bring themselves money. But they ain't going to do it for free. But it's a gift. So someone gave you a gift for free, but not going to give me a gift because I have the gift. So my gift allows me to use that gift to charge you because I have a gift that someone else gave me from above that allows me to do what? To profit off of my prophecy. I'm not saying someone is not to have a living, but you have to, what is the actual end game? I tell y'all no lie. If I had a way to prophesy this world to be a utopia, I would give it to you. Why would I want to see my brother and sister on the street? And I got this magical, he walks around with a cape and all types of, let me show you this vampire Brooklyn looking Negro. Lord Jesus, help me, Father. Lord, Father, Jesus, Father. Let me see what we got going on here. This man looks like a vampire in Brooklyn. This is your king? What? The miracle seed for $52. So arbitrarily, his God had a number of $52 in his head. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Like, if I want to see that, I'll literally watch Eddie Murphy, Vampire in Brooklyn. Same person. Now he's bald head and, he's somber and he's melancholy talking and, I feel that, I've said this and this things and all. Well, how are we going to get black people out of poverty? Well, if you just come to Larry Reed's Patreon, God is going to provide a word and we're going to, we're going to discuss some things. And he had a thing called the Prophecy Bishop Academy, or Prophecy School. And someone told me that it was $190 to watch it, like, on your computer or your phone. Profits for profits. I know I'm crazy, y'all. Listen, I know I'm a lunatic. I literally walk around now saying, Andre, you a moron, because this stuff don't make sense to me. Because when you understand the scope of our oppression, not just, and I'm not even going to talk about my lineage, the American-born, whatever y'all want to call us, black, colored, whatever. I don't get into that. But let's just talk about the massive rich to the massive poor, right? Dream hoarders, right? So in dream hoarders, one of the things that always catch me is how, like, when one of us get money, we always have people pulling us down because I got money, but then my brother ain't got no money, my sister ain't got no money, and then what happens is she needs to be bailed out and he needs to be bailed out. And that's called anchors. But if you live in a community and all of y'all got money, that's called balloons. Why? Because if I have a clothing company and you got if you got the actual capital, meaning the machinery, and then this person has the distribution channels of selling the stores, we do what? Lift each other up. Balloons, anchors. If you're a prophet, why don't you have that mentality? I got the vision to tell you what to do. We can do it for free. Or how about you get compensated after we get the money? I'm a moron. I get it. But this stuff be running through my mind. Right? It be running through my mind. And I had to tell that story because when I saw Larry Reed posted it brought me back to when I was called out by the prophet. And he was absolutely wrong. And then the year later when I approached him, he said, I don't be knowing what I be saying. He literally said that to me. And then he said, it ain't, then, and which I'm going to give him an olive branch and say he is clairvoyant and God's Wi-Fi was off that day. The fiber optics was wrong. The signal was wrong. And maybe he wanted to call out my friend to the left or my cousin Jonathan to the right. I don't know. Maybe he said, I want to pick on that funny looking fat black boy who just minded his business and his glasses is crooked and he's like this. That's what I was doing. Point I'm making. The gambler's fallacy. Every situation is his own. If it's 20 pieces of oyster crackers, does not mean this will have 20. And it does not mean this will have 20. If I shoot a basketball 10 times and make it 8, but I never shot a basketball before, doesn't mean I'm an expert. And if I shoot it all the time, but in front of you, I shot it twice. I shot it 10 times, I missed it twice. I mean, I only made it twice. It doesn't mean I'm a horrible shooter. You just saw me on a bad day. Prophecy. You think about that? Cash App is over. You know I'm on my Reverend Ike stuff. I didn't ramble today. I was a little, that story took me back because that was the first time I knew the matrix was kind of off, right? The coding was off. But be careful who you are endowing money to get to hear the sun is going to come out tomorrow. I guarantee you that. And if it doesn't, guess what? You're dead. I could predict that. Yep. I could predict that. So I hope this made sense. And if it doesn't, don't mind, because I'm a moron. I really am. But if it did make sense, then maybe you are somewhat of a thinker like me, or a person that just kind of like understands that something isn't right with this whole concept, right? Because, I swear to y'all, if I could help, I would. Like, in about 40 days, in May sometime when it gets nice, I know it's consistently nice, I'm going to go out and probably do like, I'm probably going to go to Wendy's or Taco Bell, right? And just get a load of food and just literally sit on the ground with the displaced people, and we're going to feed them and talk. We just have fun. I don't care if they smell foul, because I understand their situation. I don't care if they mentally ill, because I understand their situation. And guess what? I'm not going to charge you Patreon to see it. I'm going to just like take my phone and be like, yo, let me introduce you to my sister who's eating. Merry effing Christmas. That's it, y'all.